Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and meteorologist, DT, from Weather Risk here in your Central Virginia, your commander of chaos, your colonel of confusion, your captain of catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather. A lot to talk about here. Also seeing a lot of stupid comments about the winter being over, so we'll get into that in a little bit. So our topics here, we're talking about, it's going to be general. Now, it is going to be a mild and kind of a rainy pattern over the next 10 or 12 days for some portions of the country. There's no doubt about that. And it's going to be kind of similar to what we saw in December. So when you get the mild pattern there. And interestingly enough, the way the jet stream pattern evolved at the end of December to get us into this cold spell in January is probably how we're going to get out of the mild spell in the first week of February. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Going to be a lot of heavy rain coming up. Mild temperatures on Saturday into the southeastern states, the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, southern New England. Some areas where you're not getting the rain. If you get any sun on Saturday before the rain, we'll get into the 60s, both on Friday and Saturday. So that's going to be pretty impressive in the Mid-Atlantic region, Ohio Valley. Obviously, it won't get that warm in New England and the Great Lakes, but it'll be pretty mild. Then we have another mild interval coming up February 1st, the 6th, maybe February 7th. And then the winter returning probably after February 8th. So let's get right to it. First, here is the website, in case you haven't been there. And you can see all sorts of great things here on the website. Just also let you know, there's the shop button. You want to see it. We have all sorts of weather products you might be interested in. If you do landscaping, snow removal, if you trade, grain, weather, that sort of stuff. So a lot of really great information in there. Okay, stuff you can buy. Now, this here is the snowstorm page on the left-hand side here, the weather snowstorm page. And then you can see also the threads page as well. And this is the grain page, which I use for my grain and commodity stuff all around the world. And there, finally, here is the Facebook page, which has about 300,000 followers and a reach of like 2.5 million during big storms on the East Coast. All right, let's get right to it. So here's the next 5 days. So this was the upper air pattern for January 19th. You can see this, okay? And again, you can follow the text along here if you want to, but this was the polar vortex. There is your blocking pattern. There is the upper low that brought the Arctic blast in it. And you had this big ridge on the west coast going up to the block in Alaska and Siberia. So you had a direct connect Arctic flow coming straight down from the Arctic region, Western Canada, driving the cold air in. So this was the pattern was only a few days ago. This is not last Friday. Now look at the pattern here today on Tuesday. Look at this. Massive trough instead of a ridge here. Total complete change. And instead of a big trough here, you have a gargantuan ridge. And the polar vortex, that's now up in Greenland. Way out of here. Okay, which is a positive NAO. So totally different pattern reversal. Only a matter of a few days. Now, what's going to happen here is this trough on the Eastern Pacific west coast of North America is going to slowly progress eastward. This is where it's going to be Friday evening. So that's got this low here in particular. The big piece of energy is going to generate low pressure in the delta, which is going to come up in the Ohio Valley, then try and jump to the East Coast. But in the meantime, you have this enormous ridge here. Look at this extreme positive anomaly right here with the really impressive warmth. The polar vortex is over Greenland. And more importantly, look at the shape of the vortex here. It's shaped like a football. You see this? It's shaped like a football. Everyone see that? And when the vortex is shaped west to east oriented like that, the Pacific jet always comes blasting in and everybody turns warm. That's exactly what's going to happen. The image on the right, this is now for Saturday night and Sunday. So this upper trough finally moves eastward, and you get the trough down the East Coast. There's an upper low here over West Virginia, and we get a nice low pressure area. But look at the flow here. I've seen some people say, look at the ridge. Well, we're getting cold air. No, we're not getting cold air in this pattern. That's bullshit. Anybody who says that doesn't know what they're talking about. What you have here is a flat, rounded ridge. So if you look at the lines here, this is all Pacific energy, mild air, relatively mild air coming in, and there's no connection to the Arctic region at all here. There's no connection at all. So, and all the cold air stays to the north. Now, the other thing to point out is this is the positive EPO in Alaska. You see the big upper low? That's positive. If you like cold and you like snow in the eastern United States, you want to see that negative. This is completely the wrong sign. In Greenland, you have a positive NAO. The vortex is over, gigantic upper low in Greenland. Again, if you want cold and snow in the eastern U.S., you want that to be negative. So both these features are completely positive. This is a disaster weather pattern if you like snow and cold on the East Coast. Now, that's not to say you can't snow, let's say, in northern New England or the Great Lakes. It can always snow there, as long as temperatures are marginal. But for everybody else, this is a bad pattern. Now, here's again, as this trough comes eastward here, you're going to start seeing waves of low pressure coming out along the front at first, and that's what we see here. This is now Wednesday and Thursday. Everybody east of the front is very mild, a lot of warm air. You can see the high off the coast getting southerly winds, and you see periods of rain coming in through the Ohio Valley, the Deep South, the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a SECL, or what I call a significant East Coast low. Okay, not a winter storm, not purely a rainstorm, it's something in between. So just a general term, significant East Coast low. Now this is the European from yesterday. This is Monday. You can see what it's doing. It's taking the low through Tennessee up into Virginia, Pennsylvania. Now the rain snow line, let me call up the marker here in case you cannot see it. Okay, this is the zero line right here, the first blue line. You see this blue line? It's way north. It's by Binghamton, New York. Okay, and almost at Albany, and well north of Boston. Okay, when the system comes up the coast, crosses the mountains and goes in the mid-Atlantic, and even further north, when it begins. So this is just a big rain event. Now, let's look at some other options here. This was the early morning GFS, the 12Z run from Monday GFS, okay? Look where it's taking it, off the coast, people getting excited. Ooh, snow in Pennsylvania, snow rain in New York, and snow northern Jersey, Pennsylvania, applying more snow from Pennsylvania. This solution is bullshit. And the GFS is way too far south and east. First, the GFS is always too far south and east. We know that. And also the upper air pattern. This kind of pattern here, you have a big ridge, so this low is going to track up further north with each passing run because of this huge ridge on the East Coast. So sure enough, we compare that was the Monday GFS, right? Operational run. This is Tuesday. Here in the upper left, this is 12Z Tuesday. This is this midday here on Tuesday. Look what the low is. Oh, did we mean North Carolina? No, we meant Ohio. Oh, yes, Ohio, yes. Now, there's a triple point in the Delmarva, New Jersey, but this is all rain, folks. Look where the rain snow line. It's north of Binghamton, for Pete's sake. So, yeah, if you're in Toronto, great, okay? If you're in Buffalo, if you're in Albany, northern New England, terrific. Now, then it jumps to the coast, and it does get some changeover back into Pennsylvania and New York, but it doesn't look like a big deal here. This is not particularly heavy snow. It's still raining in Boston and Rhode Island and eastern Massachusetts and Connecticut and New York City. So, but northern Pennsylvania, New York State, central and northern New England, yeah, it could be some accumulating snow in these areas, all the way down to Pittsburgh, perhaps, and West Virginia. Now the 18Z, excuse me, let's go to the 12Z European, see what that's doing. Let's compare them. So this was the 12Z Tuesday, this was the 12Z Tuesday GFS. Now let's look at the 18Z. That's what I want to show you, the 18Z. And the 18Z is even further north. Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it. You can see the low. It's driving the rain snow line even further north. It's now north of Binghamton, almost north of the Berkshires. The primary low is north of Pittsburgh, headed towards Erie. Come on. That's just going to pull up a whole bucket of warm air, a lot of rain. So that's even worse. That's even further north. And then, of course, when the low does jump to the coast, all the cold air is far to the north. And now before, where Pennsylvania was getting snow, now Pennsylvania is getting rain, even in the mountains. So there you go. Okay. This is the 12Z European. Let's compare the European. Now here's the European. This is the Tuesday operational run. This is valid on a Saturday afternoon. There's the low in Tennessee, moderate rain, heavy rain at times. Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, the western half of Virginia, western Carolinas, northern Georgia. All right. Then it goes into West Virginia. You get some snow along the Pennsylvania-New York border into Binghamton. That seems reasonable. Five Fingers Lakes, that sort of thing, over maybe Poughkeepsie. But you can see the low is now over D.C., and the warm front is being driven northward. And now the low, finally, by Sunday afternoon, is off the Jersey coast, and the rain snow line is north of D.C., north of New York, north of Boston. So, again, central and upstate New York, western New York, northwest Pennsylvania, they're doing pretty good. Vermont, New Hampshire does pretty good, but once you get south of the Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire line, it looks like mostly rain. Again, it might end as snow, but mostly as rain here. So this is a East Coast low, but it's not really a winter storm, again, unless you want to count significant snow in northern Pennsylvania and New York State. But this looks like an ordinary garden variety inland type of system in a mild pattern. Not a big deal. Here's the 0Z GFS also. And now remember, the operational GFS is way to the south, and looks at, so if you look at the ensemble, it also from early this morning was way to the south. There it is. And if you look at the blue line, that's just rain snow line here. The 0 degree isotherm goes right through into eastern Virginia, western Maryland, then north, very close to Harrisburg, just to the north, then to Allentown, or just to the north of New York City, and then along the Connecticut coast. And Boston is cold enough for snow, according to this, and look like it's going to get a pretty good dump of snow when this moisture from Pennsylvania comes in. But the updated versions don't show that. So this was the 12Z GFS. And you can see here, the rain snow line is further north. It's pushed north into Pennsylvania and then north of New York, and it's getting close to, it's north of the Connecticut coast. And then the 18Z run, the latest run, looks like the European. The low is further north, and New York City is now +3, and Boston is at 0, Binghamton is at 0. So there could be snow, there's going to be snow in this area, yeah, that's right. But along New York City, the coastal Connecticut, southward, it's all rain. European is warmer, and of course, I think the European solution is correct. It usually is on East Coast storms, and you can see here, call up my marker again. There's the low. It's further north. It's not off of North Carolina or southeast Virginia like it is on the GFS. You see the difference? Okay. So let me shrink it here. You can see the difference. You can see it's got the low. It's much further north. That's the first thing. It's stronger low, 1,004 millibars. And New York City is +4, +5 at 850. Boston is +2. Providence is +4. So the rain snow line is way, way north, as you can see, central Pennsylvania up through Albany and up by Concord. And that is the 12Z run. And then on the bottom right here, this is the low moving off the coast for Sunday afternoon and evening. But the 0 degree 850 isotherm, the rain snow line, is back in Boston, but it's still north of New York. So Boston might go back over snow. And of course, it's set in New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, Midwestern Massachusetts, perhaps northern Pennsylvania, northeast Pennsylvania will get a good snow out of it. Okay, that's the first event. Let's look at our teleconnections here to see what exactly is going on in terms of our overall pattern. Now this I've shown before. Let me bring this back up here. So these are our 4 teleconnections. This is the dividing line showing the Atlantic side and the Pacific side. So the Pacific side, we have the EPO and the PNA. They both have negative and positive phases. Negative phase is having a big low, is having a big ridge in Alaska. Positive phase is having a big upper low in Alaska, like we have right now. Positive PNA, West Coast ridge. Once positive, when it's negative, West Coast trough. On the Atlantic side, we have the Arctic Oscillation and the North American Oscillation here in Greenland and Baffin Island. The Arctic Oscillation, when it's negative, means that the jet streams can come much further south, especially the cold air. And the NAO, when it is negative as a Greenland block, you get more storms on the East Coast, and when it's positive, you don't. And of course, there are combinations of the PNA and the EPO. You get different possible combinations, and the same thing here on the Arctic Oscillation and the NAO. If we look at our latest graphs and trends, this is the Atlantic side. Here's the Arctic Oscillation. Notice it's been January 17th. See how negative it was? See, these are where it has been, right? Now it turned positive. Now these are different model projections here. And you can see they all keep it generally positive. Some hint that it might go negative in early February, some hint. North American Oscillation, again, it was negative. Now it's gone positive, and most of the models keep it either positive or neutral right through February 6th or 7th. Okay. This here's the Pacific side. Now here's the EPO, and again, we were negative for a while, now we're neutral, and now the EPO stays positive to neutral all the way through, which is, again, not favorable. It's not ideal at all for East Coast cold and snow, or eastern U.S. cold and snow. And here's the P&A. Now, the P&A being close to neutral, and you can see it generally turns positive, which is a new trend here in February, going into the first week of February. Longer term, this is the European 45-day ensemble. We can see this is as of Sunday, January 22nd. So this here is the Arctic oscillation. Let me shrink this map down a little bit so you can see it a little more. All right, so you can see it's very positive here right now through February 1st. See, the yellows and reds and oranges, these are all positive values. The darker the color, the more red, the stronger the positive value. The darker the blue, the more the negative values. The light greens are slightly negative, and the darker greens are strongly negative. So right now we're strongly positive through February 1st. Then we have a kind of a neutral period. And then look what happens in mid-February. Very strong indications from these different ensemble members of the negative Arctic oscillation. For the NAO, same sort of thing. Let me shrink this one down a little bit. You can see it some more. Again, strongly positive right through the first several days of February. Then there's a neutral period, February, let's say 5 through February, 15. And then a strong indication of negative values for the second half of February going into March. On the Pacific side, here's the EPO. Again, strongly positive. Then a bit of a neutral break here in early February. And then look at the strong signal here in mid-February for negative values, which is what you want to see if you like cold and snow and winter chances in the eastern U.S. And then this is the P&A. Now, this is significant because the P&A has been consistently negative for most of the winter with these massive troughs coming in to the west coast. I mean, remember, for example, you could see the trough here, and then we also had the same kind of pattern back in December as well. So this would be a significant change. And here what happens is, once we get into February 7th or 10th, consistently positive for the rest of the month, which means a ridge on the west coast, possibly reaching up into the Arctic regions, which increases the cold air supply. So this would be a nice trend, a big shift if we would actually see that. Sustained positive P&A values. So that's nice to see. All right, the MJO. Well, here's the MJO. You can see it. The last 45 days, moving through phase 8 and 1 when it got cold, and phase 2. Phase 3, notice a little loop-de-loop here, and now we're phase 4 and 5. What's noticing here is, look how this thing is moving. Boom, 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 at a very steady pace. Back earlier is moving very slow in phase 8 and 1, and then phase 3 did this little curlicue, but since then, it's been moving like a bat out of hell right through the different phases. Phase 4, phase 5, phase 6 looks like phase 7. That's what it looks like. Now, if you project this at a steady pace, what happens is the MJO goes into phase 7 by, January 25, January 27, and then it goes into phase 8 by February. And that's a very stormy and cold, that's a stormy and cold pattern for the eastern U.S. That's the snowstorm pattern. All right? So, but if we look at our projections, we don't see that. Now, we have 3 different models here. Here's the European, here's the Australian, here's the GFS, right? Okay, this takes us February 22nd, February 19th, February 22nd. Look what they all do. They move it into phase 6. Then the European has this little stall right here in phase 7, this little curlicue. So it doesn't get to phase 8 until after February 15th. The Australian does the same thing. Now, also around February 13th or 14th, a couple of days earlier. But again, look at the little twist right in here. See that? I don't know why it's doing that. And here's the GFS. Again, look at the twist of the curlicue right there. Now, on one hand, my intellectual mind says, okay, well, all of them are doing it. They're all showing some sort of stall in phase 6 or 7. Okay? That's very possible, end of January into early February. Okay? But it might not. Maybe these are wrong. Indeed, there's data which suggests otherwise. So, for example, this is the Kyle and McRitchie experimental MJO projections from the CFS, the last 4 runs. And as you can see, they have it going to phase 8 by February 7th. They don't show a stall here at all. So, it's probably going to stall, but it might not. So there's some variability here. That's the first thing. All right. Now, assuming this is correct, okay, and all the data does have it going to phase 5 and 6, okay, and that's not an issue, okay, and then phase 7. What does that look? We know that we get this kind of upper air pattern. So this is the 6 to 10 day upper air pattern. All right. Now, for anybody who likes cold and snow in the eastern U.S., the 6 to 10 day it's essentially a disaster. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we have January 29th after the storm leaves the East Coast, the rainstorm. And you see a strongly positive EPO here, gigantic upper low in Alaska, positive EPO, large upper low in Greenland, positive NAO. And see the ridge in here, right? So this is all Pacific air coming into the country. There's no Arctic cross flow here at all. By the time we get to beginning of February, beginning of February, I think it's February 2nd, you can see, again, the EPO and the positive NAO, they have not changed at all. At all. And the trough coming into the East Pacific has now made impact on the West Coast. And this ridge, which was here in the Rockies, and at this point you're getting some high pressure coming down on January 29th and 30th, maybe 31, with bringing some cool air into the eastern U.S. Not cold, just seasonal. Normal high pressure coming down from Canada, all right? And dropping a cold front into the Great Lakes, New England, Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley for a couple of days. But once this trough comes in and pushes this ridge east, then now we're back in the warm pattern again, another gargantuan ridge in the eastern United States over the Great Lakes. So there you go. So that's not a great pattern. Okay. Now, if we go into phase 8, if that were to happen, I just want to show you what that looks like. This is phase 8 on the MJO right here. You can see that. And it's quite pronounced. And you can see below normal temperatures over the eastern half of the country, some much below normal. Now, it's a pretty dry pattern here for January. I did not post a February rain one, but it is a little wetter, so there is that. And then this is the upper air pattern. Let me show you it up for February. Now, this is generally known as, when you have phase 8 in February, you get this kind of pattern, especially with a El Nino. This is known as a snowstorm pattern. You have a massive block in Greenland and northern Canada, a strong negative anomaly in the mid-Atlantic. This produces snowstorms on the East Coast. Now, this would happen, like in the first week of February, the second week of February, if it happens. And it's based upon this being correct. Otherwise, it's not going to reach phase 8 until mid-February, which is different. Now, that's still going to happen, but the question of the timing is going to happen, let's say, February 7th or 8th, or February 15th, 16th, or 17th. That's really the issue. Okay, so this is February, after February 15, this is February 7th or 8th, and the second week. So it's a little different here. Now, how do we get out of this pattern? Okay, 11 to 15 day. So we have here the European model from yesterday, the new one showing the same thing. So no reason to update it, but you can see the huge trough coming in the Pacific energy. So what happens is this upper air pattern here, you can see when it gets pushed eastward, right? So this comes in, here's the trough. It's going to start digging down toward Texas, and it's going to force the positive anomaly, the ridge, start northward into Quebec, Canada, which is what we see here, all right? See it's driving this block, this ridge northward, and as it goes further north, what happens is it becomes not a ridge, but a blocking pattern. So now this almost qualifies as a negative NAO on around February 6th or 7th or 8th, if this is correct. All right, and when this energy digs down towards the southern states, you start getting a ridge in western Canada again, and we end up with this. This is February 9th or 10th. Now here again, this has now become a block. That's this positive anomaly has become this block. We have a ridge on the west coast suddenly, and we have a split jet stream. Notice we have two jet streams here: the northern one and the southern one. This is screaming snowstorm for the East Coast in mid-February. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm just saying this is what it shows. I'm not predicting that at any stretch of the imagination. And finally, I want to show you something else. This is the upper air map from December 21, 500 millibar. Same kind of problem. We have this huge ridge here, like we're going to have here, okay? And then the Pacific energy was undercutting it, California, all right? And eventually what happened is we ended up getting the ridge getting pushed to the north, and we started getting a positive negative anomaly in here, and that allowed the whole pattern to begin to shift and change. So the pattern has its own, the warm pattern has the seeds of its own self-destruction. All right, and the key is going to be whether or not this energy can dig down into California to Texas and to the Gulf Coast to force the ridge into Greenland up towards Quebec, Canada, Hudson's Bay, where it becomes a block. And then you're off to a different pattern. Okay? I think there's a pretty good chance of that happening after February 7th, but we don't know that. We're going to have to wait and see. So my point here is do not give up on the winter. Okay, we got a tough 10, 12 days coming up to us. If you like cold and snow in the eastern U.S., we're not going to get much of that. But the winter is far from over. And finally, the other point is another big difference between this and this is that back in December, the IOD, the Indian Ocean Dipole, was raging, and now the Indian Ocean Dipole has collapsed. So that changes the impact on the northern hemisphere pattern and makes for a much more lively winter. When the IOD is very positive, the winter in the eastern U.S., especially North America, but the eastern U.S. is much milder. But the IOD is now gone. It's completely gone to neutral conditions, so that factor is no longer holding it back. All right. I know a lot here in this video. Appreciate your time. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I will see you over on the Twitter page and over on the website and over on the Facebook page.